Okay, good morning. Good morning, EMA webinars. So we've got this morning a knowledge share. We've invited the guys from Higher Space to come and talk to us about their accreditation, so their safe events accreditation that they've put together, which I said I'm extremely impressed with all the work that they've put into this. And as we go through it, I would, looking back on this and everything else, I would make a strong recommendation to people to seriously consider themselves or a couple of the team members doing this. I think the biggest reason that we probably should be doing this accreditation is, one is assuring ourselves that we have been through a formal process and that this is an official accreditation, which also gives your businesses and your brands the assurances that you've followed this process. And you know, I know one of our biggest worries and one of our company's biggest worries is that in hosting an event, if something goes wrong, i.e. there's a COVID-19 little peak through our event, we've done our true diligence and processes. We've followed those to assure the businesses that we have done everything that we can. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren, I'm going to get this wrong, I know, but Meulemeester and Elliot Sargent from Higher Space, who have been two key players in the development and architecture of the process of this, which is constantly evolving as well and being updated. So Lauren, Elliot, over to you guys.
Thank you, Richard. Elliot, I'll let you share the presentation so everyone has a bit of a visual thing to go along.
Sure. Morning, everyone. Thanks for letting us join you today. Let me just quickly share my screen. Give me a wave if that's not popped up for you all. Hopefully that's all there.
Works for me.
Yeah, can see that.
Brilliant. So yeah, just following on from what Richard said, really, I thought I'd just kick things off by just giving a little bit of context and a bit of background as to how we got to this position of why we decided to kind of head down this route of getting these accreditation schemes in place. So I guess if we kind of think back to, March, April time, which seems a bit like a lifetime ago now, but this was actually something that a lot of our clients, we work with hundreds of different corporate bookers from all different types of industries, but there was kind of a common feeling of uncertainty. And I think everyone was crying out for a bit of a need of, there was some scientific data out there, there were some guidelines, but I think it's fair to say that everyone was a little bit confused and there was a lot of grey areas. And I think a lot of our clients were asking us for a definitive framework that they could collate all of the info in one place, keep referring that to. And then so just out of that, it kind of really naturally evolved. I think the first thing that we did was we set up a consultation group, which I know Lauren will cover a little bit more, but we pulled together a lot of corporate bookers, a lot of venues, associations. So getting all sides of the industry to come together to sit at the table. They still meet actually. And, just having that constant conversation of, like Richard said, things are evolving daily, if not weekly. It's constantly on the move. So kind of having that, regular touch point for people saying how it's affecting them, what they would need, what they're experiencing. It's been a really valuable, asset that they've been doing. It's actually something that they still invite new members as well. So if you'd like to be part of that conversation, I think, definitely drop me a message or Richard can pop us in touch and I can share how you could get involved with that. But one of the main things that came out of these sessions was the white paper, which you may or may not have come across. We released it, it's quite a while ago now that it first was released. And that is that kind of definitive guide, keeping government guidelines up to date. And, we update new versions of that. I think it's about every 10 days to 2 weeks. Automatically lands in people's inboxes when they've downloaded it. So it's a really handy document to have or to refer back to as and when you need. So if you haven't already downloaded, I probably would definitely urge that you grab a copy. I can post a link in the chat box as well a little bit later on if that would be helpful. But yeah, I think the main thinking behind all of this really is, I know we've been given the green light now for October, or a tentative green light. I know we've still got some hoops to jump through to make sure that all happens. But I think the next big obstacle for our industry is just the whole element of confidence and trust of being able to host events, know that people are going to, you know, actually want to attend and be willing to attend. And I think that's the main kind of goal behind these kind of accreditation schemes, is to rebuild that trust and kind of, as you say, like make sure that you're communicating to attendees or venues, groups, whoever it might be, that you have taken the time to upskill and kind of gain that knowledge of what needs to be done, but then also communicating that you've put all of those steps in place so that every possible measure has been taken to make sure that the event is running as safe as possible. This has kind of been in collaboration. Whilst HiSpace, I think we've definitely been kind of leading the charge a little bit, but it's definitely a collaboration project. If I just quickly jump through to the next slide. There we go. So yeah, like I said, it's not just HiSpace. We've definitely been using our position, you know, as a go-between between so many venues and so many corporate bookers. We are in a position that we can kind of throw this out en masse fairly quickly. But we've definitely been using, you know, public health bodies, government, industry associations, all have been weighing in on this framework to put it together. With the actual accreditations themselves, whilst we, yeah, like I said, we provide the actual body, the training courses and all the resources you might need, in terms of actually giving you that stamp of approval, it's actually a completely independently assessed body at the IOSH. So yeah, it's about us kind of working with them to get this out to as many people as possible, so the industry does start to feel hopefully safe in taking a few baby steps in terms of, you know, coming back safely. So what I will do, I mean,
Elliot, just jump back in there as well. I see that you comment something about DCMS. Of course, as with my BVP hat on, we work very closely with them on, you know, talking into government. So have you, what you're saying there, I'm assuming, is that you've been involved with helping them draft documents to go back into venues to say, this is what you need to have right.
Exactly that. So in terms of the accreditation schemes that we're offering, there's two. There's one which we'll go into a little bit more detail today, which is the actual event organizer accreditation. But on the flip side of that, there is a separate program for venues to undertake. So we've been working alongside, like you say, DCMS, and it's a separate program, but it's a great way for a venue to turn around and say, we've used this time of not being open to kit out our venue with XYZ, put these facilities in place so that they can then market themselves as well as a safe space. And then you're kind of going at it from two sides of attack. If you've got a safe venue that's taken every measure from their side, you've got a safer event organizer that's done everything in their control. It just puts you in a really good position to be able to, I think, market that to your attendees and, like I said, hopefully drum up a little bit of interest of, you know, wanting to attend in person again. Can definitely answer any more questions on the venue side as well. Like I said, I think we're going to focus on the organizer one, but later on, if there's specific things about the venue one, by all means, just give me a shout and I can see if I can help with those. These are just an example of some of the people that I said, that consultation group that I've mentioned. So it has been quite a broad range of people getting involved and weighing in. It's been a really interesting discussion, just because you do, I know from my side as well, there's certain sides of the industry that I don't always come into contact all of the time. So to actually kind of sit down and hear from their point of view how it's affecting them and what they might need to see from a framework like this, it's a really well-rounded discussion. And like I said, if that's something that you'd be interested in joining future sessions for, just let me know and I'm sure we can make that happen for you. But what I'll do now, I'll just, like I said, wanted to give you a little bit of background, but I'll hand over to Lauren, who can actually dive into the specifics of the actual the organizer accreditation for you.
Yep, of course. Thanks, Elliot. So the actual Safer Event Organiser accreditation. So it's a very kind of simple process, really. So what we are doing to give out this accreditation is actually also offering a digital training course alongside it. So basically, it's not just a set of guidelines that we're sharing to everyone and then kind of leaving you to it and kind of with a self-serve model. We actually built out a digital training course to basically take you through 4 key modules that kind of cover all the topics around creating a safer event. So obviously these 4 modules will include the science of COVID-19, because we find that people need to understand the risk of the virus to be able to mitigate those risks and understand exactly where those risks are. And there's been obviously so much news going around and so many different things happening So it's good to have everything consolidated in one place to really understand what it is that you need to watch out for as an organizer when it comes to this virus. And so the second key module is going to be understanding government guidelines. I'm sure all of you are a bit exasperated with all the everything that's been shared recently and all the uncertainty that comes along with it. You know, we're being told many different things at once, and I know a lot of people have come to me and just asked me the question, like, what is it are we supposed to be allowed to do now? So basically part of our course, we're just making sure that everyone understands exactly kind of what they can and can't do based on what the government have been saying, which sometimes can be quite cryptic. Then thirdly, we're going to go around the safety event measures. So these are obviously all the key areas that we focus our safer events white paper on. So you have these on the right, although it's missing out the food and beverage side, but we basically go through those one by one. And we explain exactly how the event organizer is responsible to set up basically measures to mitigate the risk of COVID-19 within each of these 7 key areas. So we'll go deep dive into all those, and we'll also make sure that the event organizer is aware where their responsibility lies and where the venue responsibility lies. So obviously we are offering 2 different accreditations, one focused to the venue, one focused to the organizer. However, it could be that, you know, one day an organizer is asked to set up an event at a venue who hasn't necessarily undergone the accreditation. And then it's good for you to obviously know exactly how it's up to you to make sure that the venue has put all those different measures in place on the venue sides to ensure that you can work with them properly before you set up a contract with them. So we make sure that you kind of know exactly which participants, which players in organizing this event is responsible for what, and obviously make sure that you can communicate that effectively with every single party involved. And then obviously, yeah, final module is the responsibilities as an event organizer. So making sure that you know exactly kind of what falls under your remit and what should fall under the remit of the venue, and just make sure that you can communicate that. So the course is actually really intuitive. It's an online platform that we use, and you just kind of go through each module one by one. It'll tell you kind of where you've left it off if you can't finish it off in one go. It's completely flexible and up to you to decide how you want to manage your time around it. It could be you want to do a bit every day, or it could be that you just kind of want to power through and do it in a full 3 hours. But basically how it works is that after every single module, you'll be asked to take an assessment on that module, and then you'll need to make sure that you pass to get the accreditation awarded. So the assessment itself is going to go out to a chartered member of the IOSH, the IIRSM, and OSHCR. So all of those assessments are being independently assessed, meaning that you've got this independent kind of stamp of approval on those assessments. So it's not going to be our team internally that do it, it's going to be a chartered member of the bodies I've just mentioned. So Elliot, if you could go to the next slide. So I think one key bit to note is obviously that we will support you and obviously the venues with on-site facilities through, you know, this essential accreditation, which will be through the initial consultation, the fit out and training of obviously staff, but also the site itself. Then we'll go through the initial assessment with you. So when you pass the accreditation, you do get a risk assessment template, but we'll make sure that, you know, we can also get that stamp of approval from those chartered members of those public health bodies to ensure that, you know, your event has done everything in its power to mitigate the risk of COVID-19, and make sure that you've basically ticked off all the boxes, which are going to be so important for brands especially, to show that they've done the work. And also it's going to be so important in restoring that confidence to both stakeholders to host the event, but also getting the audience to actually attend the event. And then obviously we've set up our own higher space PPE shop. I don't know if any of you has the chance to kind of go through our very, very attractive set of PPE equipment. But we've, our commercial director somehow managed to partner up with direct suppliers from China to ensure that we are offering certified PPE products to both venues and organizers. Because as you might have noticed, there's a lot of dilution in the market right now when it comes into PPE, and a bit of uncertainty about where these certifications are coming from. So we make sure that you've got a consumable supply of PPE equipment that has been accurately certified and that there's no risk there as well. And then obviously key bits is obviously just that ongoing assessment, whether it's the organizer side or the venue side, because everything's changing so fast, guidance constantly changing. So we ensure that we're obviously offering this set of measures that are constantly being updated. We're getting feedback from across the industry, but also all the resources that we use to put together our white paper. And just making sure that everyone is up to date with those latest measures, and obviously making sure that everyone's up to date by making sure that they're continuously being assessed to make sure that everyone's keeping up with it. So just quickly, are there any questions before I just move on? No? So quickly on the costs and benefits. So the typical training and accreditation costs £95 per VAT per person. So obviously if you're looking to do it as an organization as a whole, there's a 5% discount applied to each additional colleague undertaking the course. However, I understand that we're giving 10% discount to people from the EMA. So Richard will share that information with you afterwards and in the coming days. But I think key benefits for you to know is obviously that once you've passed the accreditation, you're going to get all the tools and resources that we promised to you at the start. So these include obviously digital certification with your unique assessment number, and we'll give you some design assets as well to make sure that you can communicate that to all stakeholders involved. I think especially as an internal corporate organizer, you definitely will have to maybe do a little bit of convincing with your stakeholders to actually start planning for physical events. So we're basically going to give you all the communication tools you need to be able to show what you've done to go above and beyond to be able to host a safer event. And then obviously alongside that, we're also going to take you through the process of your first 2 events, make sure that those specific events are independently assessed as well and have gone out to be reviewed by independent accreditation. And then obviously we'll make sure that your name is added to our network of safer event organizers, which will also make sure to do a lot of promotion around, so that we know we can show that these brands have gone above and beyond to basically mitigate the risk of COVID-19, and they've done everything in their power and everything possible really to be able to mitigate that risk. And then Elliot will now take you through a bit of a teaser video so that you have a bit more understanding of what you can expect and what type of content you can expect through our online course. But this should be a nice one to introduce you to it.
Thanks, Lauren.
So this is, you're going to see our commercial director that Lauren mentioned earlier in action. So yeah, look, hopefully this works for you all.
Hello, and welcome to the HireSpace Safer Events Accreditation Training. My name is Floyd Widener. I'm part of the commercial team here at HireSpace, and I will be walking you through the 4 sections of the training. When the pandemic and lockdown started, we as a team came together to think of ways that we could prepare ourselves for the eventual, albeit slow, return to normal. We immediately thought that we would need to be prepared ourselves, prepare for our customers, and help the industry in general to deliver events and use venues in a safer way. The objective of this training is to supply you as quickly as possible with the ever-changing but pertinent information so you will be able to get your meetings and events running again. As information and guidance evolves, we promise to make sure you receive the updates so you will always be at the forefront of what it will take to hold a safer event. Now, given the constraints of social distancing and lockdown, we've created this training on our own with the production tools we have at hand. So bear with us if it's not currently as polished as something our friends at the BBC might produce. And I personally do apologize if I'm not as eloquent as Sir David Attenborough, but unfortunately he was not available due to confinement. In any case, we will continue to develop this training in line with new guidance issued by the government, public health bodies, and industry associations. And we will take on your feedback to ensure it is always leading the way and keeping you informed. And when modules are updated, we will let you know. Enjoy the training, and thank you for making a difference.
There we go. That was Floyd for you. So just to kind of jump in then as well. So that was just kind of a teaser of kind of what you can expect from the actual content. Like Lauren said, it's a really intuitive, easy to follow online at your own pace in your own time. Just wanted to share some examples of some of the people that are actually already going through, although I believe, you know, the first lot of batches of certificates have actually already gone out as of last week, I think. So some of these will already be certified now, which is great.
And then on to the next steps. It's pretty intuitive. Obviously, the EMA members are going to get that 10% discount. So what we've done is basically set up a landing page for you to set up through your exclusive portal so that you can get that discount. But I think key bit is to know is that, yeah, brands are currently doing it because obviously they need to start understanding exactly how physical events are going to come back into play. I think as we've noticed, it's up to us to get events back into play. We can't just wait around for the government to give us the green light or tell us exactly how that's going to roll out. So it's definitely time to start looking back into it, to start understanding exactly how it's going to look like and how we can implement these safely. And yes, key bits for you to do is basically download that Safer Events white paper to make sure that you're always updated with the latest. And yeah, we look forward to hopefully working with a couple of you on these accreditations.
Lauren, Elliot, thanks so much for that. So I've certainly got a few questions.
Yes.
And I don't know if any sort of the members online have questions. You can either give us a wave and come into this. I certainly like to think that Chris, Anna or Mark, who are leading on the sort of back to live work that we've done to date, may well have some questions. But to kick off with a few, so what makes this different, or what other accreditations are out there? I mean, what makes your accreditation different to other guidelines out there?
Yeah, of course. So there are some great accreditations out there for sure. We simply aim to consolidate all of them into one and create a set of comprehensive guidelines that help planners go basically above and beyond what's being given from the government guidelines, to be honest. And we are making sure to do this by basically getting feedback from across the industry. So our guidance will provide you with practical tools and resources to help you inspire confidence in planning events, which is essentially kind of what we need to do to get this industry kickstarted again. And I think that's going to be the big challenge around this. It's that, you know, confidence that we need to give back to the industry and be able to show our delegates kind of what we've done and what we can do to ensure their safety at physical events. The key bits about our accreditation is obviously that digital training course that we offer alongside the accreditation, and ensuring that you really understand basically every aspect of the safer event strategy. So whether it's the science behind the virus or the measures being put in place or your responsibilities as an organizer. Next, obviously, our framework is put together, as I mentioned, from feedback from across the industry. So, you know, we meet up with our consultation group quite regularly, every 2 weeks. And this is obviously made up of corporate planners, venues, agencies, associations, and obviously government guideline to make sure that we have that collaborative industry-wide response. And then obviously it's a framework that's constantly being updated. We make sure, and we put a lot of operational resource behind ensuring that we're constantly updating our documentation, whether it's the modules or the Safer Events white paper itself. We ensure that, you know, we're adding all these key bits every 10 to 2 weeks, as Elliot mentioned, and make sure that we're always keeping up with the times. The only thing about obviously guidance out there is that there are a lot of self-serve guidance, and they might not necessarily have that operational resource to keep those up to date constantly. And then finally, and I think most importantly, it is an independent accreditation through a third party. So as mentioned, a lot of accreditations are self-serve, whilst we'll make sure that your measures have been independently verified. And we basically provide you with the communication tools to and resources to be able to communicate that to all stakeholders involved, whether it's, you know, internal communication to your stakeholders, to your audience, or yeah, to everyone involved, really.
Okay, so when does this kick off? I mean, is the site live and ready now that you can start the accreditation process? And second question on that, which I think I heard you say that, you know, if there's an update, if I've done the accreditation and I've passed, is there if there's updates to that, do I then receive updates or keep me up to date?
So as mentioned, we've already got our first organizers accredited, so everything's fully up and running now, and we're really glad to see those first accreditations being awarded. So yeah, the update, you will basically get an email notification every time we make an update to either our white paper or our module. So usually our module will probably look to revise these to basically increase production values, but also to make sure that the content is always up to date and relevant to organizers undertaking the course. So if we need to basically recreate a module just because the content's now out of date, we'll basically give you an email notification to mention that this is now available. So one key thing to note is obviously once you've undergone the course, you can always go back to it. If it's just a refresher that you need, or if you want to see that updated content, we'll let you know exactly kind of where you need to look for it. Then secondly, our white paper, it's we definitely encourage everyone to download the white paper, because every 10 to 2 weeks we're going to be providing an update, and usually it's at the start of our white paper. So we give you the dates that we've done those updates, but we also give you exactly the key points that we've had to make an update on, and it's at the start of the white paper, so really easy to find. And then again, it's going to be another email notification for you to know those.
Okay, cool. A couple of questions in the box. I think I can answer Chris's for him, but he asks about how long does it take. Basically, they're estimating 3 hours that it takes for you to go through it, but of course you've got to pass the little tests that they put at the thing. So if you fail on that, you've got to go back in and redo it. And Donna's asking about, is there a minimum number of additional staff to apply for the additional 5% discount? So I'm presuming Donna's saying if we sign up 2 or 3 people from London and partners, do we get the additional 5% discount, or does it have to be 10 people plus?
No, there's no minimum number at all. So even if it was just 1 additional colleague, we're happy to add on that kind of increased discount for you guys. But yeah, so if it is just a couple of people, or even if it is a group of 10, it'll just keep building with that discount, and it keeps going up in stages for you.
Okay,
yeah, no.
That's cool. So another big question, I think. So we've had this discussion. Like I said, we've got a working group within EMA who are working on this. I know that you guys have seen the papers that we've produced, which we're updating. But on our leadership call last week, there's a couple of big challenges here on getting people back to live. And one of them is, generally, we have a feeling that we know venues are going to do a great job. We know the spaces are going to be clean. We know that we can go through this risk management and everything else and kind of put on a safe environment, create a safe environment to hold meetings. But of course, we're responsible for, or a level of responsibility for, the attendees and how, you know, that they are self-declaration and stuff like that. So I don't know if your documents touch on that, but also more importantly, public transport. People have still got to get to these venues. So do you have recommendations on, you know, how we alleviate concerns for people in, you know, coming to events?
Yeah, I think you're right. That is definitely going to be another big challenge. I think that's just more of a personal one for all of us of where you live in relation to that event and what your usual kind of route would be. There's definitely, it is acknowledged in the white paper as well. So there are restrictions of when events can start and when they need to finish by, so that you are avoiding those rush hour times if public transport is your only route. I think people are approaching this slightly differently. When I've spoken to some clients, they've been looking at venues potentially a little bit further out of London that encourage more people to drive with the parking. So people are approaching it in, you know, in a bunch of different ways, but it is something that is addressed in the white paper. I'll be honest, I can't remember the exact word for word verbatim on it. I will share, I'm not sure if Lauren's got a little bit more info on that.
Yeah, so key bits is obviously avoiding the rush hours. So making sure that the start time and the end time of your event will avoid key bits of spikes in human activity on public transport. It's also part of the communication to your delegates that you do beforehand. So, you know, making sure that they're able, if they can, you know, to use a bicycle, and making sure that you've got those bicycle storage facilities at the venue, and making sure that people can walk if that's feasible. Also making sure that you're near big transport hubs, so you avoid those extra transfers, or just, you know, show them some walking routes from those big transport hubs. Just making sure that you're thinking of all those things. But I think also just communicating to your delegates that, you know, we've done everything we can to keep this event safe, so please make sure that you stay safe when you come to this event by doing XYZ, which, you know, everyone knows now, you know, wearing a mask in public transport, avoiding peak times, avoiding public transport if you can. But I think also a big part of it is going to have to provide that hybrid element to people that might have difficulties in accessing the event. So just making sure that, you know, for those people who can't make it just because they're worried of the journey in there, that you do have that alternative option for them. So that you have
I think that's a really good point. I think the big point I picked on that is the responsibility for us as the event organizer to be communicating with our attendees and reiterating their responsibility. So not now, you know, leaving it up to them, but to turn around and say that, you know, the likes of, you know, we are doing everything we can to make sure the venue, the process, you know, everything you come to is correct, but you have a responsibility to yourself and to your fellow attendees in, you know, if you have any concerns that you may well have been exposed, then please do not attend. And secondly, getting here is going to be one of your biggest challenges, and so please be conscious of this, you know, those. So probably need to spell that out.
Yeah. No, so we exactly, we will spell it out. Yeah, we will. That's exactly kind of what the course will look into as well. That's the part of delegate safety and delegate health. So obviously there will be those health declarations to make, etc. But also making sure that, you know, you are taking into consideration the demographics of your audience. Just for example, if there are people at higher risks, making sure you give them some special attention, making sure they know they can join virtually. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of communication there.
Okay. And then another big question is, how have you thought about, or have you discussed internally at your end about how we can help brands, so the businesses, so our members' businesses, take that first step in hosting an event? Because there is, again, a big sort of risk management process that our members have to go through with their brands. It's not like, oh yeah, let's just go back to live now, forget about this. There's, you know, there's a financial implementation on the value of the brand and everything else, the risk. So I throw out British Airways when their IT systems crashed 18 months or 2 years ago, it's probably more than that now, 2 years ago, and the damage that created to the brand. So if you can imagine holding a conference and then a COVID spike in that conference or affecting that, etc., could be fairly damaging to the reputation of the business. And so reputational management and value is a important thing. So have you given that any thoughts? I know it's a big question. It's a tough one for.
Well, I think that's kind of why we put the accreditation together, to be very honest, to give that confidence back to brands, because we know exactly what their concerns are. So as Elliot mentioned, the whole point of this accreditation came together because we were having those conversations with our corporate planners that we work closely with on an annual basis. And we just realized there was so much uncertainty. No one knew how to kind of get physical events back into play, but also there was a lot of question marks because events were basically being made redundant for a little while there. And so what we wanted to do is basically bring that confidence back and tell people that no, you can put these physical events back together and make sure that you're doing everything you can in your power to make sure that they're a safer place. And so the whole point of the accreditation is to be able to show what brands have done to go above and beyond the government guidelines and above and beyond any other guideline out there by getting an independent accreditation assessed by independent bodies that will show that they've done everything in their power to mitigate that risk by all the measures they've taken place. And obviously through the accreditation, you get the risk assessment templates and you'll have that documentation ready to go if anybody inquires. And then again, it's for example, it's the PPE shop that we set up to make sure that everyone has access to certified PPE. And we've got all the documentation around that as well, if anybody needs it. Obviously, there's so much we can do, and we've done everything in our power to make sure that all the measures that we provide are fully comprehensive and kind of go through everything you can do. But then you also have all the certification, all the documentation as well to back you up in case something does happen. So it is kind of it does kind of mitigate that risk for you as a brand.
And I guess just to quickly follow on from that as well, I think quite early on that's why we actually realised we needed 2 separate accreditations, one for the organiser and one for the venue. A lot of our clients, I don't know if you've ever been on the Higher Space website, but I know a lot of people kind of do refer back to it when they're looking at spaces. And a really common thread that we were getting from clients was, regardless of where that venue is or who that venue is, if they have taken some form of step like an accreditation scheme to kind of upskill it and kit out that venue, they're automatically going to get bumped to the top of my list. And I think we're actually building into the website so you'll be able to search by safer venues, so you can see which venues very quickly and clearly have also covered everything from their side, so that you can then really kind of communicate the venue have done it. We've deliberately booked a venue that has step by step gone through all these measurements. I've taken the time to take all of these measurements on my side as well. There is obviously always going to be that element of risk, and I think, like you said, with the travel, if you lay those out and really clearly communicate what you have done and what an attendee also needs to take responsibility for to attend, I think that's, as long as everyone's kind of doing their part and pitching in, then I think that's all we can ask at this stage.
Okay, there's a question here from Andrea in the question box, and I asked to follow up on that. So basically, she's asking about what do you think about legislation changing, i.e. not requiring PPE, etc., or when possibly could that be happening, depending on the alert level in the given country. So again, the different phases of that. And then we've seen some events that have been held this week that were crowded, and I questioned that, and we are talking about a corporate event. So Andrew, you might want to jump in and expand on this a little bit. And also at the same time, when you're talking to venues, what is their position that if there is a spike? So on Sunday, I'm supposed to be traveling down to France on holiday, and my wife is now getting a bit fret because what's happening? They're saying are we going to get locked down over there? Is it still worth going? Can we cancel? Well, no, we can't cancel at the moment until something happens. But from a venue point of view, what happens if the venue gets locked down and we've got an event booked there?
So
a lot of different questions there.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's maybe start with legislation changing on PPE, and then we'll go down from there. So PPE, again, I mean, we're going to be giving you measures to make sure that you're mitigating the risk however you can. So I think from our side, if you're organizing an event, I would definitely communicate to delegates that, you should wear masks in an indoor space, and you should maintain social distancing, and you should ensure that the flow of people only go the one way so that people can kind of adhere to those social distancing guidelines. And I think key bit is just to make sure that you've got PPE there, or making sure that you know that delegates will need to bring their own PPE, or they won't be allowed to enter the indoor event. There's such measures. It's going to be up to the organizer to set those rules. And obviously, if you're trying to mitigate the risks to the utmost, to your utmost capacity, then it's up to you to ensure that you've done everything, and that you communicate to people the reason why you're putting those measures in place, because it's for their safety at the end of the day, and you've got their safety at top of mind. So no one can kind of go back at you and say, oh, but the government now has told us that it's okay to not wear masks. It's kind of puts you up there as a brand to ensure that you've done above and beyond to ensure consumer safety. So I think obviously we're going along with government guidelines. We're going to be updating as well, but if we find that, for example, there is still a risk of transmitting the disease, and it's probably a higher risk if no one's wearing a mask, then we would probably definitely say that you should include those at your event.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so we can say, even though the public health is saying you don't need to wear a mask, we're asking our attendees to wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, then please don't enter.
It's going to be a question mark for you as an organizer to answer, for sure. But it depends, like, are you going to go above and beyond to ensure the safety of your delegates, or are you going to also kind of be lenient with what the government has been saying, and then, you know, if worst case scenario, blame it on the government guidelines. It's going to be a question mark to definitely consider before you start putting together the event, and obviously looking into what delegate communications you're going to have.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying to our members with the guidelines that we've been helping put together and stuff. These are, you know, our sort of advice from an association point of view, taking information from our members, but at the end of the day, you as a company have to put your own guidelines together, and they may well change accordingly. To jump again onto Andrea's question, let me rephrase this then. So where does the responsibility lie, or do you feel it lies, within social distancing at a corporate event? So we have government guidelines, which is 2 meters or 1 meter plus. And that means plus something else, i.e. masks, standing shoulder to shoulder, back to back, not talking face to face. But whose responsibility lies to police that? Is it the venue? So when you're talking to venues, are you saying to them that, you know, they have a responsibility to keep an eye on how the rooms are being used and make sure that people aren't gathering very close? Or is it the responsibility of the corporate event management or agency that they've delegated that responsibility to?
For me, I think wholly that does come under the venue's remit, just because they know their venue inside out, they know the capacities, they know how many people are allowed in a certain space, and the flows, or, you know, whether they've got one ways and, you know, journeys in place. What I would say though, that is, with any aspect of kind of this whole bit of going through COVID, it's never a good idea, I think, to just kind of be like, to pass the buck almost and be like, oh, the venue will just do that. I think that's also what's a really big benefit of doing the organizer accreditation, is that having that knowledge to then walk into a space that isn't necessarily your own, but to say, actually, I don't think that's quite right. My attendees are not going to be quite happy with this. I think we need to be a bit stricter here, or whatever that may be. I think when it's in that venue though, the responsibility does fall to the venue, but I think it's also our just responsibility to make sure that that is being upheld, and to question it if it's not.
Yeah, I think my biggest concerns is with all of this is the old game when alcohol is introduced. So, you know, you've had your webinar, and people are sort of kept, or your seminar, you've kept the sort of social distancing, hopefully continue to do that over coffee and everything else. But also we've got a couple of drinks inside us, and, you know, the barriers sort of start to collapse and people start to cluster closer. And I do think that, you know, those are areas that will need policing, in a subtle word, but we need to keep an eye on those.
No, absolutely. Like you said, like once everyone has had a couple of drinks, the gaps do seem to be less 2 meters and more more one, and you know, that does happen. But I think, again, as with all of this, it's communication. Even though your attendees might not have gone through, you know, they haven't gone through a visitor accreditation scheme, but it is then our responsibility to communicate what rules are going to be in place at that event. And you know, everyone that is coming to these events are adults. There's only so much policing you can do. So I think it's up to us to make sure that that knowledge is out there, what we're putting in place, and the best ways to adhere to that. But then it is a delegate's responsibility as well to make sure that they are following those guidelines. And you know, and if certain things do get breached, then yeah, like hopefully to point those out. And also it's their responsibility as well, that should, you know, post event, you know, they find out that they might have contracted, you know, the disease, to then also know what steps they need to follow to feed back to the organizer, to feed back to the event. It's that whole kind of chain of command that I think needs to be really clear.
Yeah, and there's definitely going to be a lot on staff training for obviously the personnel who are going to be there at the event, and obviously being the hosts. And obviously it's a massive collaboration piece, as Elliot said. It's always going to be a collaboration piece between the venue and the organizer. But I think a big part of it is going to be the fit out of the venue, but also the staff training to ensure that they know what to do in these situations and how they can handle it, whilst also ensuring their own safety.
Yeah, and I think, again, guys, I'm going to push it out to anybody if there's any other questions before we start to wrap up. So especially Christopher, Anna, Mark, who are working on our stuff. If there's any questions you'd like to ask these guys, please jump in. But what I was going to say, that I think, you know, the business to business meetings are going to be easier to manage and moderate and communicate, etc., because people are coming to a meeting for a specific reason, to have a meeting and have a communication. I think it's going to become more difficult when we start to do, you know, internal employee events, which generally a bit more relaxed, a bit more about motivation and upbeat and stuff. And certainly for the foreseeable future, you know, the summer party or even the Christmas party could be taking a big hit this year. Because there definitely seems to be a lot of alcohol involved there, from my recollection.
No, definitely. Although, you know what, I have seen a couple of those come through, and from the brands that I've been speaking to, they have had safety measures in mind. So, you know, a lot of them are looking for outdoor space, and obviously venues that have undergone safer event accreditations. And so even for internal social events, I think it's again up to the brand to ensure the safety of their own employees. So I think they're definitely going to be looking at those safety measures as well.
Okay. All right. So I can't see any more questions coming in. So I'm going to sort of call it a wrap at that. And thank you guys very much indeed. We will be probably tomorrow circulating or posting the video as usual up on our website. I've got a communication coming out. We will be promoting where to go to you know, log on and register for this and get your discount, and we'll keep communicating that with updates from the team at Higher Space. But I see Chris has put it in there that he would recommend. I recommend this. It's a personal feel safe factor. I've been through this process. It's not just what I think. It's probably, you know, it's accredited, which is really important. So it is official. And you can say to your business that you've been through this process, as well as then getting the ongoing updates. It gives you more confidence in, you know, recommending guidelines and having that authoritative position inside your organization. Say, yes, we can do this. No, we can't do this. These are the rules and the outlines. So Lauren and Elliot, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and all the effort you've put into this. I don't know if you've got anything to wrap up with as we close off.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having us, to be honest. It was great to be on here this morning.
No, yeah, definitely was. And like I said as well, I think I mentioned at the start that if you haven't downloaded the white paper, I'll give Richard a link to share, because it is a really handy document that automatically lands in your inbox and keeps you up to date. And we have got that consultation group as well. So if you are interested in joining that conversation, then again, just let Richard or reach out to us directly, and we can make that happen for you. But no, thanks for having us. I hope it was all right for you.
I got one more question. So I just thought about this, just to reiterate, because I know a lot of our members are very conscious of data protection and stuff like that. that if they register for this and they go through this process, I'm going to assume you're only using the data to communicate around this. You won't be then adding it to your mailing database unless they ask to be added to it and stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
They're not going to get sales hits from you guys.
No, that's fine. No. You'll get obviously all the consequent updates that follow up through and kind of get notifications, but it will all be centered around specifically your accreditation scheme.
In safe events.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Great presentation. Thanks so much. Yep. Some really good comments there that I hope you both can see.
Great.
Thanks, guys, and we'll be in touch tomorrow, giving an outline. We're going to take a couple of weeks off on the webinars. So as I said, I'm in France, and everyone else seems to be taking holidays. But we will be coming back to you, and I'll communicate all that tomorrow. So thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks.